Parents told my brother that he could take my house, and I could just live in the camper in the backyard because I'm single and he has a wife and kids. OOP is in his 30s and his younger brother, Dan, is 29. Dan is married with 4 kids. Sil refuses to work, so Dan can't afford to live anywhere but with his parents in a crowded 3-bedroom home. Dan is the golden child of the family. At the pandemic start, OOP lost his job and couldn't afford his place. Knowing he was about to be homeless, he bought a camper and asked his parents if he could park it on their property. They wanted a high rent. After a few months, OOP finally gets a job at a warehouse that even lets him park his camper there. He works his tail off and moves up in the company, saving his money. Eventually he buys a house. His family shows up unannounced and Sil and Dan look at the house with greedy eyes. Dan wants to move his whole family in rent-free. OOP tells him no and Sil attacks him. OOP threatens to call the police and they leave. OOP posts the story first on social media, controlling the narrative among extended family. A week later the family returns, demanding OOP change his mind, but he doesn't. A week after that, Dan and Sil show up with a moving truck and drill out his locks, ready to move in. OOP shows up, quickly gets back in his truck and calls the police. Chaos ensues, but OOP finally gets them to leave with police help. OOP has a Christmas party at his new house for his extended family but doesn't invite his immediate family. It's going well and he's having a good time when his immediate family shows up. Extended family calls them out for their actions and OOP tells Sil she needs to get a job if she wants to be able to afford a house. Their oldest son, 7, started kicking OOP and yelling. They finally leave. Later on, Sil floats the idea of the parents getting a camper and moving in it, giving Sil's family full run of parents' house. The parents shot that idea down quickly. OOP's parents ask to meet in public. Dan is with them. OOP says no, pointing out that they wouldn't help him when he was homeless and have always favored Dan. He asks his family if they think he's rich and he breaks down his budget so they can see he isn't. They eventually give up and leave. Sil has been complaining about the parents and OOP on social media, but OOP has ignored it. OOP decides to rent out the other 2 rooms in his house to friends. His family takes it badly, sending his mom to beg him to let Dan and his family rent from him. OOP points out that Dan broke into his house and he would never rent to him anyway. OOP finally gets cameras for his house. Dan discovers Sil has been cheating and the youngest child isn't his. When Dan confronted her about the affair, she attacked him and their eldest got hurt trying to intervene. Police were called and she was arrested. Once she was released, she went to OOP's house to call him out on his Reddit posts. Causing all of this mess, she shoves OOP and threatens him. He says he will call the police and has it on his doorbell cam. OOP decides to take the video from the previous year and the doorbell cam footage to the police and also gives the footage to Dan's divorce lawyer. After all of Sil's shenanigans, the parents seem to come out of the fog and have started attending church. They saw a video post describing the saga so far and came to OOP to give a genuine apology. OOP gets into the details of Dan's divorce. Sil actually had her affair partner testify. Dan ended up taking on a lot of the debt to get his name off the birth certificate of the baby but didn't have to pay alimony since Sil ended up working for her family. She got partial custody of the other children but she rarely sees them. Dan gets depressed and drunk after the divorce and ends up driving to OOP's house. OOP berates him for driving drunk but takes him to commiserate in his camper. It becomes sort of a bonding/healing moment for the brothers. Later on, Dan asks if he can borrow OOP's camper so his kids can have more room and things have started getting a little better between OOP, Dan, and their parents. But OOP sees the biggest improvement in the kids' behavior. Sil looks down on Dan for moving into the camper and OOP suspects she egged his truck on Halloween, but whoever did it was bundled up in sweats. To start this off, I came back after all this time to find 500 messages in my inbox and 130 unanswered PMs. Please don't PM me anymore. There's just too many to answer. So if you PM'd me and I clicked ignore, I'm sorry. Just know that's WHY. It was not personal. I just felt too overwhelmed to reply to so many, but that's not what brought me back to Reddit. I decided to stay away at least a year because my posts were not exactly boosting family morale. So I didn't log in for quite some time, but then the other day my brother Dan spotted a video with an unbelievably similar to mine in far too many ways. Only it was about an OP with a twin sister instead of a SIL, but it had so much of the same. Entitled Narcissistic Parents, Guy treated like shit all his life and then rendered homeless, golden child sibling, keeping the favoritism a closely guarded secret from family while the OP was growing up, sister still in her 20s has 3 kids and was pregnant with a 4th. Sister's eldest son attacks OP, and above all them trying to steal the OP's house by breaking in while he wasn't home. So many parts were nearly identical. Even 2 lines like "suck it up" and "my house is not up for grabs" were in the video. My parents and brother are frankly pissed. And I wasn't happy seeing the video either. We've all been trying hard to get past our previous family dynamic and what XSIL put us all through. You can imagine it took a lot for me to let go of my grudges. But in a year my parents and Dan have improved more than I'd seen in my entire life before that. And I love me Nibblings to pieces. So whoever wrote that copycat story, congratulations, you just sent my entire family right back into needing therapy. And yes, my family. I had a few naysayers before, but Dan kept his word. My camper was returned to me a few months ago and in good condition. Dan took good care of it and thoroughly cleaned it before giving it back. He and our father also resealed the roof on it once while it was in their care. Inside it's no worse for wear than it was when I was living in it. Only I got it back smelling like pine cleaner. There was some minor drama while Dan was living in my camper from a neighbor right behind them. Not quite sure she qualifies as a Karen, but she was close enough. She started yelling at them from over the fence about the camper and started threatening police. My brother and father went off on her and then explained Dan was living in the camper so his son could have his bedroom. Well, the neighbor still wasn't happy but stopped with the threats. My father talked to her husband later though and he was bull mad at her. Then he apologized on her behalf and said Dan was doing a good thing by giving up his room to his son. The neighbor husband also congratulated Dan on kicking out XSIL and said he was always afraid to mention before, but she was just a horrid woman. We can all agree on that now. So yeah, the neighbors aren't a problem anymore. Dan and our father managed to get some money together on the side and bought a slightly bigger camper to set up in our parents' backyard. We needed my truck just to move it, but we got it in there. It's basically the best Dan can do right now till the credit debts his ex piled up are paid off, and even then, he's got the future of his kids to plan for. He may be living in that camper for the next 10 years, but it's preferable to how it was when he was married. His ex-wife certainly can't and won't be contributing to college funds for the kids, except maybe for her fair baby. Dan's camper is admittedly better than mine, and it's newer, bigger, and has its own bathroom. Mine does not. Although Dan never really uses said bathroom. It's basically become a closet since the tea. Dan and I had a joking laugh about me being jealous he's got the better hobo house, and we bantered like sarcastic gentlemen about it. He's kitted out his camper with some better amenities, like a flat-screen TV complete with streaming video games and DVD. He said it feels like he really has his own place now even though he's just in the backyard, and he's much happier now that he's divorced. Dan tells me one day he'll get a truck too just so he can move the camper on his own someday, but for now he's sticking with his minivan for the sake of his kids. So his camper is sitting pretty where it is, and mine is back in my backyard where it belongs. Though it's not gone and used, I temporarily rented it to a cousin who moved into the area for work, and they were only in the camper about a month before finding their own apartment. Other than that, it serves as a guest house when needed. Relatives come by to use it when in town so as to not need a motel. My nephew has come over to stay in it a few times for fun as well. His sisters don't really have an interest. The camper the closest he's ever been to camping. Same here sadly, because I didn't buy that camper to camp but to live. As for my parents, they've gotten therapy. My mother got medicated for her mental problems and fully acknowledges her terrible past mistakes as a parent with all of the favoritism, as does my father. My father is still awkward around me, but he's been fairly active in his church and is working hard to rebuild the family reputation as best he can, and Dan has cut back on drinking a lot since he isn't so stressed out anymore. He's even taken up exercising. He's in pretty good shape now, and he told me his ex-wife saw the picture of him he posted online after shedding 20 pounds and called him to compliment. He didn't take the bait. As for the holidays, my parents, brother, and Nibblings all came to my Christmas Eve party last year, along with most of the other relatives who came the year prior. No problems at all save for the FA. Both of my tenants were away seeing their own families too. Things went swimmingly. Not only was XSIL not invited, she wouldn't have been able to crash the party anyway because of my restraining order against her, but she also barely made any attempt to spend time with her other kids either. She only bothered to see them twice a month at best. She didn't even send them any gifts for Christmas or birthdays since being outed as a cheater, and the kids were initially pretty upset about that, but now they just don't care. XSIL I guess decided she was gonna try to live like she was single again despite having a baby at home, and it didn't go well because life gave her one hell of a cheese slap. On New Year's, XSIL went out late to party like it was 1999. and she got pulled over by a cop on her way home. She got arrested for DUI and her car was impounded. She called Dan while being arrested begging him to come get her car to keep it from going to impound. He told her he was not helping her, and she could deal with it herself. Dan has drank and drove, so it was kinda a little hypocritical, but this woman put him through so much. I don't blame him for rebuffing her. Some flying monkey of XSILs called Dan to berate about him being a terrible person. Pretty sure this was the same woman who called me a while back. Dan had none of her shit and went off on her with a long tirade about his ex's cheating, what happened in the divorce, and that he has no sympathy for his ex since she left him with mounds of credit card debt and she does nothing for their kids anymore. The flying monkey didn't call back. We still don't know who she was, but Dan said she sounded like a religious nut. XSIL went to court and she pleaded guilty for the DUI. Dan found this out because she called him claiming that because of the DUI she wouldn't be seeing her other kids anytime soon. She told him she was sentenced to take a 6-month DUI class in which time her license is suspended until completion, and she won't be allowed to. They make you take regular and at times random urine tests, and when you finally get your license back you have to have a camera and breathalyzer installed in your car for a year. Also increased insurance rates for the DUI on record. XSIL has not been having a fun time, but I have no pity for her. I don't drink and drive. Sadly, that's all the info I have on XSIL, as she's kept minimal contact with Dan for some time now. And eventually she'll probably stop contacting him altogether unless absolutely necessary. I don't know anything else about SIL's parents, or her affair baby. Even Dan doesn't know, but I do still have a bit of info on someone else. Remember XSIL's affair partner, the bronze-tongued lout? Well, he made his social media public again, and he doesn't seem to acknowledge the existence of XSIL or his child at all. Dan tried to message him and promptly got an immediate block. So the guy is just being an ass and acting like his shit don't stink. Whatever. His knocking up XSIL got her out of the family anyway. So in a way, we're all thankful to that AP bastard. That's everything I have, and hopefully won't need to come back again unless my truck gets egged again next Halloween. I've silently followed your stories from the start. I'm happy to see how things have progressed since. While I know it's a long road until things are fully repaired, if ever, I am glad your parents have acknowledged what they did and are actively trying to fix it. Dan has stepped up and now you two can even banter. And the fact the kids enjoy you is wonderful. Honestly, I'm happiest to hear about your bond with the Nibblings. The fact that your nephew wants to come over to their uncle's house to camp is just wonderful. I hope XSIL either wakes the hell up and shapes up for the kids, or she stays the hell away. Anyways, hopefully, the future is less drama and more happy times. Hopefully, I will not see a post from you again, and I mean that with the best of intentions. This is as wholesome an ending as it can get. It's good to see a family dynamic being repaired. Kudos to your parents for doing the necessary work to realize how much damage they caused, and to your brother for getting his life back on track. I'm sorry your drama saga ended up being copied for entertainment. However, I am glad that things are improving for you, your parents, your brother, and your Nibblings. It sounds like the toxicity was your XSIL, and it shows because with her gone, life has gotten better for the rest of you. I feel sorry for all of the kids, but they might be better off in the future without her. Wow, I really missed some updates on this. Last I remember, family was slinking away after the police were called and then got ripped a new asshole at Christmas or something. I don't remember cheating or a divorce at all. Time to go do some reading. I was just thinking the same. Let us all know if it is worth it or if it's had an outbreak of twins. TLDR, they stopped blaming OOP and are now blaming SIL for the problems they are having. They just swapped one scapegoat for another. OOP seems fooled by this and has let his toxic family back into his life. I predict more grief for OOP when his parents get tired of blaming their ex still and revert back to using him as the stress ball he has always been to them. Changing scapegoats doesn't come with therapy and apologies. Realizing SIL was a terrible person doesn't mean they're scapegoating her. Yes, but OOP says stuff like, "We've all been trying hard to get past our previous family dynamic and what XSIL put us all through." This implies they all people involved are innocent victims and she's the only bad guy here. I mean, she's nuts, but they're also scapegoating her. Both is true. This implies they all people involved are innocent victims. It doesn't imply that at all. That's what the and is there for. SIL did put them through hell. The cheating, messy divorce, all but abandoning her kids. They are mad at her for that and also accepting of their role in OP's suffering. They aren't blaming her for things that started before her arrival, or even for the other shitty things they did. Thank you so very much for saving me from having to read all the updates I missed. I vaguely remember reading some of this, but I had a feeling I missed plenty of updates. So you saved me from having to start reading from the beginning because I cannot remember the last I read of this post. Maybe it's just me, But I feel like the parents and brother got off way too easy. Like, OOP seems way too content to hang the majority of the blame on SIL, but they were just as complicit. Obviously it's OOP's life and family and his choices on how he feels about his family. But I absolutely would not be so forgiving. Yeah, I caught that. Like, SIL wasn't even there when OOP and Dan were kids, so what's their excuse for all the favoritism? Can't blame her for that, and OOP is actually far better person than I'd be, because if I'd been him, I'd pressed charges on the lot of them for breaking into my house to take ownership, kids or no kids. According to Flash multiverse time travel theory, the presence of an inciting causal event can affect events going into the future and magically back into the past as well, so the evil cheating SIL is the cause of all the childhood problems regardless of logic and traditional causality. OOP lost his job and became homeless in 2020 in the fourth borough from fall 2023. The oldest kid, the only son of the 3 kids that live with the brother, is 8, so yes, SIL was around when OOP was homeless. Absolutely agree. I assume he just wants some kind of family back and that's easiest, but it's annoying. XSIL was 100% just a symptom. Was she even around when he was homeless? Thanks for doing the math. I certainly wasn't going to. I wouldn't either. But in this case I don't think OOP is doing anything he does not want to do. It isn't guilt or something motivating him. He is doing what feels best for himself, and it is pretty obvious from his posts he ain't one to fuck with when it comes to surviving and thriving. Me. I'd salt the earth where they stand after I burned it down. Gotta do what feels true to yourself. Well said. Thing is, we're all just drive-by casuals here, sure. We need and want that divine hammer of white-hot justice, tinged as it is with retribution and vengeance, but the fact is that we're simply not in the driver's seat. We don't have to live OOP's life. We don't have to personally suffer his potential bad decisions. Yes, we collectively yearn for that killer ending, but sometimes life is humbler and milder in its proceedings, like it or not. I think not saying you have or have not, just explaining from my experience. I know my family is toxic to me and that I'm the scapegoat. I know that, but I see the dynamic they have with each other and I want that too. I feel left out, of course, and I know they'll never treat me like they treat my siblings, but I haven't been able to fully extinguish the desire to be a part of the family. I do have a found family too, but that can't completely fill the hole that's been left from knowing that, in my family's eyes, I will never be good enough. His parents are treating him well, at least, comparatively to how he was being treated. And that can give such a soothing feeling, a sense of finally belonging. When my family is nice to me, I want to engage with them more, even though I know it'll end with them going back to VVVLC. I can't blame OOP for gaslighting himself into believing it's all the XSIL's fault. That sense of belonging to your family and that feeling of their acceptance is a powerful drug. Yeah. This reads like one of those stories you'd get in those trashy magazines you'd find at the supermarket. Also loved how the family was re-traumatized by a video copying his Reddit posts, as he makes yet another Reddit post. As you/I am innocent Red pointed out on the last Boru, all this supposedly happened in 10 months. OP lost his job in 2020. Had to move out of his apartment and buy a camper. Parents wouldn't let him park it on their property as it was an eyesore. Parents lived with OP's brother, their favorite child, brother's awful wife and their 4 kids. OP roughed it for a while and parked the camper where he could until he got a good job with a nice manager who let him park the camper on site. OP saved his money and was able to put a down payment on a house. OP's family found out and demanded he give the house to brother. OP refused and there was some drama about them trying to break into the house. OP blasted them on social media and they backed off for a while. Turns out that brother's Yoon SIL got her comeuppance, blames OP for everything. Suspects she egged his truck. The end. Hopefully. Not 10 months. Camper to Christmas was 2 years-ish because OOP didn't start posting until after Christmas 2022. I think January 2023. He doesn't say when he loses his job in 2020, so the beginning is a little mushy, but there's at least all of 2021 and most of 2022 in between. The discovery of the affair again is not quite certain. OOP posts in October 2023. And it seems like it was several months ago. My guess is spring 2023. The divorce does seem very quick, especially for a contested divorce. So whoever wrote that copycat story, congratulations, you just sent my entire family right back into needing therapy. If the entire family needs therapy because of a story on the internet, then they also need therapy for being this affected by a story on the internet. Going from clues about states with at-galt divorces, and being able to sue affair partners for alienation of affection. OOP could be located immediately: Hawaii, Mississippi, New Mexico, North Carolina, South Dakota, or Utah. My guess is Mississippi. Cheap property, bosses who you let park a camper on the premises, white trash drama. I'm 50-50 on how real this is. However, I've grew up around white trash people. They can actually be lovely and helpful. Those are the people who always helped when my shit car broke down. It helps that I'm a white female who doesn't have a camper in their yard in a poor rural area. ETA, what gives me pause is the parents admitting/accepting that they have narcissistic tendencies and the mom actually getting medicated. I don't know many rednecks who actually take meds. I don't know of any rednecks who get therapy. Plenty of them get pills from the D-yard. It just now hit me for the very first time how many kids mentioned in Reddit posts have or will read about their childhoods here. Those kids are gonna get more answers than they bargain for when they hear about the Walmart version of a Tennessee Williams character. Not that their grandparents and dad come across as stalwart characters themselves, even their redemption arc is weak. Hopefully if they have their own kids they learn not to do the shit that led to all this mess. I remember seeing that twin sister version in a reading video on Facebook. Definitely seemed like someone took OP's story and changed about people's genders so they could repost it with it being a different story. The whole internet basically already knows the original story, so I'm guessing they were hoping it sounding like a different story would be enough for extra views.